we have towns and cities around the United Kingdom where multiculturalism has failed, where communities are living parallel lives, where people come here and they don't speak the language, where they come here and they don't want to take part in British life, they don't want to integrate. And in fact, they actively loathe what Britain stands for. And they are in Britain, but not of Britain.
Are we witnessing the end of the Western world as we know it? In just 2 decades, the Muslim population across the globe is set to explode by 25%. Let that sink in, 25%. According to research by the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life, Muslims will make up 26.4% of the world's population by 2030. But what does this mean for countries like the United Kingdom, the United States, and Europe at large? Are we looking at a future where Western values and identities are overshadowed by a rising tide of Islam? Is this the price of the West's so-called liberal values? Well, this isn't just about numbers. This is about the profound, often unsettling transformations that these numbers bring about in the countries where Muslim populations are growing the fastest. Take the United Kingdom, for instance. A nation once defined by its Christian heritage is now grappling with a future where it may no longer hold a Christian majority. Just a decade ago, Muslims made up a mere 4.9% of the population. Today, that figure stands at 6.5%, and it's still rising. By 2030, the Muslim population in the UK is expected to nearly double, reaching 5.6 million. This isn't just happening in the UK. Across Europe, the Muslim share of the population is expected to grow by nearly 1/3 over the next 20 years. But what does this mean for the future of these nations? What does it mean for the values, the culture, and the identity of these countries? UK's former Home Secretary Suella Braverman didn't mince words when she described the situation as a crisis. According to her, the Islamists, extremists, and anti-Semites have bullied Britain into submission. She warned that if action isn't taken urgently, the liberties and privileges that define Britain could be lost forever.
Uncontrolled immigration, inadequate integration, and a misguided dogma of multiculturalism have proven a toxic combination for Europe over the last few decades. I'm not the first to point this out. In 2010, Angela Merkel gave a speech in which she acknowledged that multiculturalism had utterly failed. And then French President Nicolas Sarkozy and British Prime Minister David Cameron echoed similar sentiments shortly thereafter. We are living with the consequence of that failure today. You can see it play out in the streets all over Europe, from Malmo to Paris, Brussels to Leicester.
But it's not just the UK that's facing these challenges. In the US, the number of Muslims is expected to more than double by 2030. And in France, Germany, and the Netherlands, Muslims already make up around 5% of the population. But this isn't merely about statistics. It's about the consequences of these demographic shifts. The rise of Islamism in the UK, the increase in homegrown jihadists, and the creation of what some are calling no-go areas for non-Muslims are symptoms of a much larger problem. A problem that Robin Simcox, Commissioner for Countering Extremism in the UK, has laid bare in his alarming report. The UK has become a hub for Islamist activity, fundraising, recruitment, and even the establishment of a Sharia-governed caliphate is no longer a distant dream, but a growing reality.
We now understand where real reform is required to strengthen our fight against radicalisation. This includes a need for Prevent to better understand Islamist ideology, which underpins the predominant terrorist threat facing the UK, while remaining vigilant to emerging threats, including on the extreme right.
We've heard the warnings before. India, a country that faced a massive influx of refugees during the 1971 Bangladesh crisis, was pressured by the West to accommodate them on humanitarian grounds. Today, Europe and the West find themselves in a similar situation, overwhelmed by an influx of migrants from war-torn regions like West Asia, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. And now they are facing the consequences of their liberal asylum policies, cultural erosion, economic strain, and the rise of radicalism. Ed Hussein, a former Islamist and advisor to Tony Blair, has warned of the Islamic penetration in Britain. He describes how parts of cities like Blackburn have become no-go areas for white men, how children in Bradford are living under Taliban-like rules, and how nearly 50% of the mosques in the UK are controlled by radical groups like the Deobandis. This isn't just about religion. It's about the very soul of nations being at stake. It's about whether the West can maintain its identity, its values, and its freedoms in the face of this demographic tidal wave. So where do we go from here? Can the West preserve its heritage while embracing these changes? Or are we witnessing the slow erosion of the very values that made these nations? And the most provocative question of all, will these countries continue to stand by and watch as their identities are rewritten? Or is it time for a more radical reassessment of what it means to be British, French, German, or American in this rapidly changing world? The clock is ticking. The choice is ours. But are we ready to make it?